and welcome to another episode of the Help Is Here podcast, brought to you by the Beyond Compulsion Academy. Today we're going to be talking about the link between food compulsion and porn addiction. So we can use the terms compulsion and addiction interchangeably here. And the reason I want to bring this up is because what we've noticed with clients is that if they do not deal with their food compulsion correctly, then their chances of relapsing with the pornography are very, very high. And it's going to be very, very hard for anyone to ever actually get free of their porn addiction, their porn compulsion, without addressing other compulsive behaviours as well. And food compulsion is a massive one, which really does require some education, some understanding of the real problem there. And it needs to be dealt with correctly for people to overcome their porn addiction correctly as well. So welcome on the podcast, Mary. Obviously, you worked in food compulsion for decades before working with me on porn addiction. Do you want to kind of just share your original sort of thoughts on the whole food compulsion problem? I know there's a lot to it, but just kind of some general thoughts on this problem, where people are going wrong, and then hopefully we can get into how this impacts people with the porn addiction as well.
Well, I feel like with porn addiction and food addiction or compulsion, like you say, we can use them interchangeably. It's not really critical what you call it. But I feel like because they're both innate desires, I mean, they're not innate compulsivity, but they're innate sexual desire and desire to eat, right? So because they have those two in common, there's a lot of similarities. And then we come across this normalizing of both of them. First, of course, was a normalizing of the food compulsion, and then the normalizing of porn compulsion, or porn addiction, I guess is what they call it a lot more out there in the world. But because they stem from what were kind of normal innate desires originally, they have a lot of similarities, but then they become compulsive, and that's where you run into the problems, obviously. So yeah, I really feel like they're doing the work with you. I mean, there was such a foundation working with food compulsion, to start working with porn. There were so many similarities because we're up against the normalizing, which is like probably the worst. But the mistreatment of food compulsion has really, set in stone now. And then we have the guys trying to stop the porn addictions, right? And then everyone in the world is like, just normalizing food compulsion. So then if they start to try to feed, this desire to use porn food and minimize that like it's not a problem, that they just end up, if they didn't already have a food compulsion, then it's going to be really out of control, and they never can really get to the critical moments for their porn addiction, to get beyond it and really, get free of the addiction. So it's really underestimated, and it's really a joke, I mean, I'm not saying it's a joke. It's not like it's funny, but everyone in the world is all this commentary that makes jokes about food compulsion literally nonstop. I mean, it's nonstop. So it's definitely not taken seriously. And a lot of the younger guys that we work with, there's an entire generation that doesn't, know that wanting to eat out of control is not a normal thing. They're born into the world of this is normal behavior, so it can be challenging to turn that around, but it's so critical that they do. It's kind of more looking at the big picture of how compulsivity in general has become a normal thing. So yeah, it's a critical piece, and we see it with a lot of the guys that, I mean, we've had guys that are like, well, I gained 20 pounds, when I stopped using porn, as if that's just a normal thing. That's not a normal thing. That's another compulsion in the making, or in the making or perpetuated when they had the original compulsion. But there's no breakthrough. There's no freedom. It's really an issue that has to be addressed very directly when stopping a porn addiction for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm, mm.
If that
And
makes
do you
sense.
think, yeah, do you think people are more susceptible to the food compulsion when they're trying to stop the porn compulsion because of how normalized it is and because there isn't really quite as much of the maybe the shame around the food compulsion in terms of, you know, like let's say someone's trying to stop watching porn, right? Realistically, it's quite unlikely they'll then switch to heroin or
Yeah.
cocaine because most guys who struggle with porn addiction are high functioning. You know, they do have jobs and, you know, families and stuff going on in their life. And so it's kind of this hidden sort of addiction. So, you know, changing to like a full on like drug addiction is quite unlikely, I'd say, for a lot of people. Can happen, of course, but with the food, if someone were to stop the pornography and then they start eating food excessively, well, in our culture, because it's so normalized to be obese and there is so many people who are very overweight and the language around food is very compulsive. You know, there's so much of it in advertising, in marketing, literally on the packaging of food. It's everywhere, right? It's the
Yeah.
normalization of these junky thoughts. So in a way, it's quite a almost like easy one to switch into from the porn. And we see it with social media all the time as well. And we've spoken about that quite a bit. But I think maybe that's one of the reasons why people are particularly susceptible to developing a food compulsion when they're trying to overcome a porn compulsion.
Yeah, exactly. And there's an in-depth education on this topic. And I think that we have my article. I brought sad food at the Beyond Compulsion Academy website. It's certainly at the Beyond Compulsion website.com. Um, but I literally wrote the exact thing you're talking about in that article where somebody's going through a difficult time, you know, and and going through a difficult time, whatever it is, if it's trying to stop a porn addiction, that's uncomfortable. There's challenges there, right? You could, it's something to deal with. People are going to encourage you to eat, right? Oh, I brought sad food, right? It's the name of the article. So, and in that article, I said people would never say, "Oh, you're having a hard time. I brought you some heroin." you know, it just wouldn't happen. I brought you some cocaine so you can get through this, withdrawal. So through this uncomfortable period of withdrawing from this addiction. Cause, oh, you're doing so good. I'm going to reward you with, donuts or whatever the hell they're going to bring, the sad food. But they would never say, oh, I brought you, let's go gamble, let's go, whatever. They would never do that. But with food, and then oh, that's how we show love, and all this kind of bullshit. Yeah, well, there's showing love with the mom who cooks the big meals for the holidays and whatever. There's this association you can have with that, but that's very different than a dependency on using food in a mood mind altering way. It's very misguided, and the continuous jokes about it really, really, guys are going to be susceptible to that when they stop porn because it's challenging, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's
You you
we
can flip
wouldn't.
it as well.
Yeah. What's that?
So you can kind of like see the reverse of this and it'll kind of help people understand some of their junky thinking better and the insanity of the stuff the addicted part of the mind will say, really. Because like if you look at it in the context of porn addiction, right? And let's say, you've been telling yourself like, oh, it's been a hard day, I deserve some porn, like I've been doing really
Yeah,
well lately, like I'm gonna watch some porn. And then let's say we were teaching people how to overcome food in
yeah,
like isolation.
yeah,
It's like, oh, here's a £50 OnlyFans voucher. Like, I know you're going through a tough time right
yeah,
now. Like, go enjoy some OnlyFans. It's like you would
yeah.
never do that, you know?
Hey,
So it
hey,
makes
come
it so
on, let's
clear.
watch some porn
Yeah.
together. Yeah, I
Yeah,
brought
yeah.
sad porn.
Let's go build a goon cave together.
Yeah,
It's like
right. Yeah,
you're
you
not gonna
just
do that,
wouldn't
are
do
you?
it, but it's
No.
so far gone with the food compulsion. I mean, it's literally so far gone. And I've said to you many times, if we don't deal with that big picture, we're not really gonna help a lot of guys that turn to food, if we don't. And literally everybody that I work with, our Liberation Day calls, which I do on the regular, I send every single one of the guys the article I brought, Sad Food. I don't know how many of them read it, but I try to say, hey, listen, you need to educate yourself on food compulsion. Do not underestimate food compulsion for sure. It's because it seems so harmless. I'm just going to have a little bit. And then, like the guy, oh, I gained 20 pounds in a month, or 2 months or whatever it was, and that, yeah, it's talk about detour to disaster, but everyone out there is going to support you in your food compulsion because they have it too, probably. And they want misery loves company. No one really exposes the detrimental effect of having a food compulsion. People just don't talk about that. Fat acceptance, fat and happy, and all this stuff. It's like, no, they're not. They're not happy. They're hiding their misery. Honestly,
Mm. I
I've
think
seen it. I've
part of
heard it from everybody I've worked with. So yeah,
I think part of the problem is many people who have a food compulsion wouldn't see their problems in life as a symptom of the food compulsion. So if you've got someone who's depressed, anxious, stressed, low in energy all the time, and they're struggling and they're overweight, they may not see their problem as a food compulsion and to do with their neural pathways and to do with the way they're thinking and that inability to deal with compulsive desires. They may see it instead as a symptom of some trauma or their lifestyle, perhaps. It's because I have this 9 to 5 job and I've got to sit down all day and I've got kids and I don't have the time to do exercise. And because of the misconceptions around, food and diet and the whole culture on, healthy eating and going to the gym, it's very hard to really see what the actual problem is. And as we've always said, the main thing to start off with, if you want to overcome a problem, is understanding the problem. The classic Einstein quote of spending like
yes,
59 minutes in the hour on understanding the problem first before trying to solve it. Whereas with the food compulsion, I think because of the misinformation out there, it's quite hard to understand what's even going on. And so people who are overweight and obese and maybe they've got all these problems in their life, they're not going to really see, oh, it's because I have this food compulsion and I'm thinking about things in an
yeah,
irrational way. They're going to put they're going to misidentify the problem essentially.
yeah. It's because talk about a ton of misinformation. They're going to look at their metabolism issues, and you can find, their nutrition. They got to focus on what it is they're eating, and all the focus goes on to the food and the exercise. And at this time of year, oh my God, it's coming down the pike already. I just saw a Weight Watchers ad because now they're selling the GLP-1s to people. It's like, oh, now our diet is so much more effective because we hired these doctors and now we prescribe GLP-1s, whatever. It's like, well, their their misguided focus on food and their millions of clients, counting or assigning point values to food, is one of the main reasons we have a food compulsion epidemic. So now they're going to profit from, this, they did not do this intentionally. This is not a conspiracy theory or whatever. They just thought, okay, well, the way to deal with this is to focus on the food, assign point values to the food. Now these people completely obsessed with the food and their weight and everything, and then they all spiral out of control into a full on food compulsion. Now they're super obese, right? Now we're going to sell them GLP-1s, So, but it's hard to, I mean to we're shedding the light on it, which we can do, but it's like the entire generation coming forward actually believes that wanting to eat out of control is an innate normal thing that is happening with everybody. It's like it's just not normal. And sue me for being
Yeah.
politically incorrect for, saying something's not normal, but it's not normal. It's just not normal. And just that this idea that you will become obese because you have a sedentary lifestyle or you're not going to the gym or you're not eating kale or you're not, whatever else it is, that's just not true. It's not
Yeah.
true. So it's a lot to come up against, but the main thing for us is we can educate the guys. Say, hey, do not underestimate this. It is absolutely critical. to the
Mm.
process. Like, as much as we would say, don't start taking some other drug, it's like you're not going to get free of an addiction by prescribing another drug, which is a lot of what's happening out there too with in therapy. So,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And I think in terms of the neural pathways and what's going on in the minds, like one of the biggest problems with the whole diet culture, diet industry, all the advice online, the influencers, the Instagram, TikTokers, all the people pushing
Oh, yeah.
the bullshit and these like stupid like diet plans that is just completely feed obsessive thinking. It's like a lot of the time they will be focused on not doing something right. So it's like
Yeah.
what we're going to do is we're going to restrict and we're going to get rid of these certain foods from our diet. Like it's like, okay, now you're not allowed to eat this, 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 and this. It's like you're
Yeah.
only allowed to eat this now. So when you've got a lot of deprivation thinking going on there, and what you're really doing is just reinforcing the knot in your mind. So now it's like it's so similar to the no fap streak. It's like all in your mind is like, okay, I can't do this thing. I'm not going to do this thing. I'm not going to do this thing. And I was talking to my mum actually this morning. It was because I
Yeah.
woke up in Sheffield after like a good time with some friends last night. We had like a little Christmas do together. So I was over back in Sheffield with family. I woke up this morning. I just said to my mum, it was so random. I was like, Mum, try not to think of a pink elephant. And I was like, Mum, you just thought of a pink elephant, didn't you? And I was like, don't you think it's crazy how like the word not is so embedded into language and yet it doesn't really exist? Like the idea of not doing something doesn't really exist. Like, why do you think that is? And my mum was actually very receptive to it. And she was like, yeah, that's a really good point. And she was like, I think maybe what's happened is like in the past, people would like say to their kids from a young age, like, don't do this because they'd like be protecting them from danger. Like, don't, put your hand in fire. Like, don't try and cross that road when there's cars like going by. And so you kind of unintentionally like bring your kids up in that way. And she was saying how I didn't know this, but she said to me that one of the first things she was taught in like some kind of parent sort of teaching classes that she had when I was like really, really young was like, you want to really focus on telling your kids what to do instead of what not to do. So she actually got taught that at some point like years ago. So she actually had a bit of information on that herself as well. And I just think it's so interesting because if you reinforce the idea of not doing something in your mind, then that can kind of spill over into your neural pathways for other behaviors as well. So it's like if you're trying not to eat certain foods, it's like you're quite likely to be focusing on not watching porn as well because it's like the way you're thinking about things is like so embedded with certain phrases and language. And so if you're always focused on not watching porn, there's gonna be all this resistance, all this deprivation. You're gonna feel like shit, and you're probably going to end up watching porn and relapsing, right?
Yeah. Well, it's so ingrained too. Group yesterday, one of the guys said he was having strong desires and he was working it through and he's told himself, I am not gonna do this. And I said, well, hold the bus. What are you choosing to do and why? It's so ingrained, to be, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do this. Even though he was using his script, thinking it through and making his choice, he was still coming to this conclusion. I'm not going to do this. And the thing is you can look at it like, just like, I don't know, oh, we're just focusing on these words, or we're trying to be positive or not use the negative of the word or anything like that. But it really is a lot more in depth than that. When you really are able to shift your focus from what are you choosing to do and why, from oh, I'm not going to do this. It's way more than just not using the negative of the word. It's or having positive affirmations or whatever you want to call it, switching up that language. But conceptually, it's a lot more in depth and a critical part of the process too. So yeah,
100%. There is a lot more to it for sure. But I think
yeah,
it's a good starting place, especially because so many people have so much like fear of how are they going to stop engaging in the behavior. But it's often because the way they're thinking about it is like, oh, I'm never going to be able to do this thing again. Like, I'll not be able to do this thing. But it's like,
yeah,
that will never be true for anybody. Like, everything we teach is also focused on, okay, well, what are you choosing to do and why in the
yeah,
moment of
yeah,
compulsive desire? And that's
Yeah.
how you can like reframe everything. So you actually see that you're always choosing something. Unless you're in a graveyard, that, you know,
Yeah.
that that's
And
that's the only time you won't have that choice. Yeah.
and you'll be able to stop and feel good about it by the way that you position yourself, by the way that you frame yourself. Frame the situation. You won't have to go on doing this behavior to yourself that is destructive to your life. Yeah.
hmm
Yeah.
And that's critical for long term success because, you know,
Yeah.
so many people, they feel like, you know, stopping porn is this thing where they're giving something up, and it just creates this feeling of deprivation. And this feeling of
Yeah.
deprivation is like such a horrible feeling. And if you're always feeling horrible about something you're doing with your life, then it's not
Hmm.
really going to be very sustainable. Like, you want to be able to change the way you think and rewire your neural pathways to get to a position where the thing you're choosing to do in life actually feels pretty good. And then it becomes very sustainable. And then you can honestly live the rest of your life choosing to do something which serves you and build this really amazing positive reinforcement sort of feedback loop, which is the way to go for sure.
Yeah. Well, and it's like with the food, with the Weight Watchers, with the point system, you can't have this, you can't have this, you can't have that, are the things that, that people want to, binge on these different foods, and they have really high point values, So it's like, I mean, even just that perspective is like, oh, I can't have that because, that's 100. I don't know the point system at all, but that's 100 points. That's 100 points of my daily points that I get to have, and it's the foods that they want to eat. And now you're telling them that they can't have them because they're this many points. And it just talk about wiring yourself in a way that's going to be deprivation thinking. And oh, yeah, it's a mess. It's really a mess. Yeah,
And so far away from the present moment as well, because what we really
absolutely.
focus on is the right
Yeah,
now at this moment. If you're assigning points and, you know, having all these metrics in your life and overthinking, overanalyzing, and like compulsively checking stuff all the time, what you're doing is you're getting yourself so far away from the present moment, because then you're basically saying to yourself, like, okay, I can eat this food now, but then that means I can't eat that food later, or I can't
right.
eat this food now because I need to eat this thing later, and all this different
Yeah,
random weird shit, rather than just like moment by moment, like what are you choosing to do and why, and simply thinking through in that moment, and then keep doing that repeatedly over time. And that's how you just feel like totally free, really. And you know, you look at the no fap streaks, and it's so similar. It's like in the past when I did the no fap stuff for like 10 years, it was always like, okay, I'm on day 4. Like this is really good. Like I'm making great progress. Oh, I definitely can't watch porn now, or I'll end my streak. Like that was the thought pattern, is I can't watch porn because I'm on a streak, but I always could watch porn. And so I always ended up relapsing because my thinking was completely irrational. And that obviously created horrible feelings. And then I wanted to get out of those feelings. And then I relapsed, and just round and round and
yeah,
round.
yeah. It's so out of the moment with like the point system, and I can't, I say it in the article, but so many people have said to me, they would save their points, their Weight Watchers points, like starve themselves so that they could go on a binge because of the addiction aspect of it, to get relief from that compulsive desire, right? That addictive desire to save their points, right? And talk about setting yourself up for a deepened addiction, a deepened addictive pathways. My goodness, I mean, but people talk about all that stuff like it's just normal behavior now. So heads up, man. Not normal. Not normal. A
Yeah.
detour to
Yeah.
disaster for
Absolutely.
certain. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely, definitely.
Good
Yeah,
stuff.
we'll wrap it up here then. Hopefully, this makes it very clear that if you want to stop watching porn, it is critical to also solve a food compulsion simultaneously, and that goes for any other potential compulsive behavior that you're sort of going through in your life, you know. And when you stop one behavior, you are likely to have desires for other behaviors. And the good news is, once you know how to deal with compulsive desires as a whole,
Yeah.
then you know, it doesn't really matter what the desire is for. You're going to know how to think that through and make a rational choice and feel really good about that choice and completely transform your life, which is a incredibly wonderful thing for anybody to do.
Yeah. I want to add one thing to that too, is we have guys in the program that have willed out other behaviors prior to the porn, stop smoking, stop drinking, whatever it's been, gambling, whatever. They've willed it out. And then, but then their porn is increased, right? The porn increases. So, and I always kind of warn them too, is like, now when you deal with the porn and you stop using the porn correctly, there's a good chance that desires for these things that you just willed out before could come back up, So it's like
Yeah.
dealing with it as a whole, dealing with the compulsions, the addictive desires as a whole is really critical to the process. Yeah. Yeah.
100%. I spoke to a guy recently spending like hundreds of pounds on OnlyFans and deep in a porn addiction, and it was just getting worse and worse.
Yeah.
And he did mention to me actually how he'd stopped weed, and he'd just gone cold turkey on weed, and he was like
Yeah.
quite pleased that he'd managed to stop the weed, which is great. Yeah, yeah. Like obviously we're all for that, but I was kind of like, well, what's probably happened here though is you stopped the weed and then the desires for the porn have like increased. So you've actually just replaced one with another. You've not actually dealt with the compulsive desires and these neural pathways yet. So that's where he was at that point in time. But yeah,
Chances
anyway,
are
thank you for
that
listening.
those
Hopefully,
desires for weed would come back up too. So just to be prepared for that. And again, like I said, deal with it as a whole. Yeah. Big picture. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for listening. Hopefully this has been useful to you. If you'd like to learn more, go to www.beyondcompulsionacademy.com. Cheers again, and we'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.